Simpsons Hit and Run is often placed into the category of games that need a remaster, with fans more than ever craving a port over to the current systems as the game turns 20 years old this year. It's getting rather difficult to ignore the influx of millennials flocking to Lad Bible like flies around a fresh poo, saying this game needs a remaster with 7 triumph emojis and a random 100 to finish the sentence as if it's some kind of full stop. As for me, well, Simpsons Hit and Run I've always looked fondly on, as it was one of the first games I ever owned on the PS2, so it kind of has that little bit of a soft spot. Running around as members of The Simpsons, a show that was always on Channel 4 in every British household known to man, was certainly groundbreaking for the time, especially as they somehow managed to remove the Hollyoaks jump scare that always occurred at 6 PM. I recently went back to replay The Simpsons Hit and Run for the first time in ages to see if it really lived up to what I played as a kid. It's quite the popular opinion that Simpsons Hit and Run was some sort of hidden gem for its time, and it was loved by all that played it. However, playing through this game 20 years later led me to believe I hadn't exactly remembered it like my brain had played out, because not only did I forget that you played as a poo for 7 missions straight, but what I was met with was a game that felt more empty than Voice Over Pete's Twitch chat. As surprising as it is to both you and me, Simpsons Hit and Run was not as exceptional as I remembered. And no, there isn't a gun pointed to me off screen, nor have I recently escaped a maximum security asylum. This is just my honest evaluation after 100%ing it a month ago. And I assume many of you by this point might have a pitchfork in hand and ready to crucify me on a 40-paragraph Reddit thread. I have thoroughly thought this out, and I'm ready to talk. It's undeniable that playing in a world filled with the Simpsons characters is a fascinating idea, and taking a show that you've been a spectator in since 1990 and placing you right in the middle of its cartoony world, couldn't really think of anything more appealing for the time. Simpsons Hit and Run wasn't the first game to ever be adapted from a TV show, nor was it even the first Simpsons game, as that title goes to the Simpsons arcade game back in 1991 developed by Konami, which, by the way, is a really underrated game. It gets a lot of slack, but I personally very much enjoyed it. I thought it was a good game. But what was so different about this Simpsons game was it was the first time you could walk around the Springfield world to your own accord with free will at your disposal. You couldn't exactly gun down a crowd of civilians like in GTA Vice City a year prior, but as soon as you start the game, you can walk right up to Marge and just boop. As I continued reminiscing in this game that I loved as a kid, kicking random civilians to the floor as they flop harder than Kanye, it would start to all go downhill very quickly. The first glaring problem that you'll encounter when you go to replay Simpsons Hit and Run is the actual story mode itself. The storytelling plays out like something you'd see in a typical Simpsons episode, maybe a bit more on the low budget side of things, but playing through these missions is like watching paint dry while simultaneously loading up GTA 5. Simpsons Hit and Run has a total of 49 missions being split over mission categories like race, collect, destroy, and follow. I cannot stress how tiring these campaign missions are to get through in 2023. My urges were perfectly balanced between finishing this campaign and putting my head through the drywall that's about 2 feet away from me. Each character has 7 different missions, with the game finishing as Homer and a 3-part finale. The fact that these 3 missions titled Alien Autopsy Part 1, 2 and 3 accumulates into, spoiler alert, a delivery and collect sequence is incredibly underwhelming. This is the same garbage that started getting repetitive at the first few missions of the game, let alone the ending to the game itself. It is very likely that not one hit and run fan will be able to tell you their favorite mission from this story. It is more likely that I remember my 2008 login to RuneScape before I recall any of these missions. I'm sure most people's feelings about the story mode are cushioned by the overworlds that you're presented with each time you complete a character's story. It's very rewarding for when completing a set of missions you get this whole new world to explore, and I think if you play through the game and not take the time to explore the several different overworlds you get to play in, you will miss the majority of this game's quirkiness. Before Hit and Run, we were only really ever presented with snippets that we could see from the TV show. For the large part, the world was very much unseen. But now we were able to walk down Evergreen Terrace ourselves, or explore the power plant, or whatever was really hiding behind Moe's bar. Once you've explored these worlds, you will quickly start to realize that what may have seemed big as a kid pales in comparison to other open worlds released years prior, and a quick 15 minutes on each map will give you all you need to see from a sightseeing perspective. which begs to ask the question, what is there to do apart from kick kids or roleplay as a normal law-abiding citizen? I can't be the only one that does that, right? That's a normal thing. Well, there's one bonus mission per world, which will give you the ability to unlock a new vehicle upon completion of each individual mission. But these missions are very similar to what you'd come to expect during the story mode. But unlike the story, these are optional and completely skippable. I'm sure, just like me, you won't be kept up at night if you feel like you've missed the World War II vehicle or Snake's Bandit. Ah! I forgot Principal Skinner's sedan! Thankfully, these aren't the only unlockables in the game. There's actually a wide variety of cosmetics to purchase, collectible cards, and more races to partake in just to get you that little bit further towards 100% completion. The game shines with this aspect, especially giving you the collectibles to find through each map. It really encourages you to explore Springfield and get to know these little quirks that they've hidden throughout the game. In my opinion, this is where the game holds up the most, acting as kind of a museum for old references that people that get nostalgic through the first 87 seasons of The Simpsons may actually enjoy. But a collectathon is not what this game was trying to succeed as, more so a PG-friendly GTA-esque open world. And I'm aware that Simpsons Hit and Run had a time crunch near towards the end of its development, which seems to be more of an increasing trend in today's world. It's just unfortunate because it's certainly intriguing to wonder what if we had given these developers more time to paint their passion. However, corporate greed has once won again, and what we are left with is a world that feels colourful, but it's just a little bit more hollow. When you're not racing and doing time trials and the missions and you have the time to actually explore these overworlds, you'll come to find that when you take the cherry-picked references out of these worlds, what you're left with is just this hollow world that is supposed to be inspired by this colourful animation that resonates with so many children across the world. It's just lifeless. The most interaction you will get out of any of these characters that are walking around the world is if you go up to them and kick them, which they'll give you one of 3 voice lines. If we ever do get a remaster of this game, which, to be honest, who doesn't love money? They're obviously going to do it. I just hope that they give the campaign a little bit more love. Instead of just taking every driving mission from GTA and dumping it into The Simpsons, for me, The Simpsons has always shined brightest when it's playing jokes on pop culture or current events, and to see that missing from one of the main elements of the games is just disappointing. As for the open world itself, I believe it fits the purpose of what this game was trying to achieve. It's just these miniature worlds for the player to explore. But given the array of lore The Simpsons has built up over time, I believe these can certainly be made bigger and better. For example, in the game you've been given access to the Simpsons House of Residence in Springfield Elementary, but they feel so tiny in comparison to what we see in the show, with a lot left to be desired. What may come across as an IGN moment from me, I don't actually hate the game. I think for its time, it was a beautifully crafted game that obviously made a lot of kids across the world enjoy this piece of media. I think it's important that we look at games in our history to see what went wrong, how it's held up today, and what we can do better. If you enjoyed this video, I think you'd really like my last video on the Wii game that sold just 100 copies in its first 2 weeks. I'll hopefully see you again soon as I upload every fortnight, but if that's not the case, I think I'll retreat now as I hear a beeping noise in my mailbox. Apparently it's from someone who just watched this video, so that is